Emergency funds. They are the first stop on the road to financial freedom. Everyone needs one when you're getting into your finances. When you're building your first financial foundation, the emergency fund is where you go first. Everyone needs an emergency fund in their life, whether they know it or not. If you're watching this video, hopefully you're figuring out that it might be a good idea to start with getting an emergency fund. So the purpose of emergency funds, it's in the name clearly, is to be able to afford emergency situations. It protects you if you lose your job and you're without income temporarily while you're searching for a new job. If you have an unexpected medical bill, if your car breaks down, you need to get new tires, or you fix something with your car, that's not expected. That's what the emergency fund is, and that's why it's so important, because almost everyone has an unexpected major expense come up in their life. It's not if, it's when, as the saying goes. And another reason to get the emergency fund on top of that is it just reduces stress and anxiety on your part, and it provides security for you. You don't have to think about some things, because you know in a worst case scenario you have some money saved up and ready to go in an emergency situation. So a lot of people get frustrated or confused when deciding how much to put into an emergency fund. So a lot of people, and what I would say is a good strategy, is to start with a small goal. If you're really starting from nothing and you gotta build up a little bit of savings, start with a small goal, like $500 to $1,000. That could be your starting block. And then once you see that you hit that, it helps you move on further. Once you kind of get past your small goal there, you really need to start turning it up. A fully funded emergency fund is somewhere between 3 to 6 months of your fixed expenses that you have to pay every month. Like your rent or mortgage, your insurance bills, groceries that you need to survive off food. There's obviously a lot of other things out there that are required to survive. That's what your fixed expenses are going to be. So 3 to 6 months of that. It's a big range. I get it. I know. Usually, you can go to the 3-month side if you're more don't have a family you're providing for, if you're single, or if you're in a couple with and you're both employed. You could do 3 months. But usually, especially when you would have kids, you would want 6 months, because you want to make sure your kids are going to be taken care of. And the 3 to 6 month range as well, based on how stable your job is. Like I mentioned earlier, a little bit about your job, how much income you actually make, if you have any side hustles that you make income off of, and just how you live your life. A lot of people, obviously, if you were to lose your job and get into some financial distress, you would probably alter your life a little bit, where you're cutting back on expenses. If you lose your job, you're probably not going to take a crazy vacation the next day, because you would know you'd be in a financial struggle. So some other pieces to it are where to keep your emergency fund. The best place right now are in high yield savings accounts. So if you have a savings account already, make sure it is a high yield savings account. You do not want it to be in a standard bank savings account. You make absolutely no money off that. And the difference between high yield savings and standard savings is high yield savings, you get paid to be in it. You get paid more. Standard savings account pay you like a penny a year, whereas high yield savings accounts pay you up to, at the time of this recording, it's about 3.5% to 4% a year. So if you have $100 in a savings account and it's paying you 4%, you'll make $4 this year. But usually once you get a sizable emergency fund, you can start seeing some income off that. And the goal of the high yield savings account is not necessarily to make money for you. The goal is for it to keep up with inflation, not necessarily to exceed inflation. The rates you get change throughout the year as the Federal Reserve sets rates, but the goal here is to keep up with inflation. So there's plenty of high yield savings accounts. A lot of them are with online banks. You got Ally Bank is one, Discover, Capital One has one, and there's multiple other ones. But just make sure if you get an online bank high yield savings account that it is FDIC insured. That'll make sure if the bank somehow goes out of business that you will not lose your money on that. So strategies to build your emergency fund. How I built mine was using an approach called the reverse budget approach. I might be doing the reverse budget approach different from other people, but that's just what I've always called it. It's essentially where you pay yourself first. So what I would do is I would automate on my paydays. I would automatically send a certain amount of my money from my paycheck immediately into my high yield savings account. It was first things first, it goes in, and then whatever's left is what I am able to use for the rest of my expenses. The key here is knowing your fixed expenses. Know your expenses that you're going to have every single month, similar to what we just talked about earlier about your rent, mortgage, your insurance, your phone bill, your utilities, all this stuff that comes in every single month that you're going to have to pay and doesn't really change that much. Once you know that number, then you can start reverse budgeting. You can start transferring the money you don't need and prioritize your savings over your random spending on the stuff that you don't necessarily need but you just like. And from there, then you can cut unnecessary expenses to help speed yourself up. Don't eat out as much. Cut some subscriptions you have randomly. Consistency is key on this one. Like I said, I set up automatic transfers on payday, so you didn't even have to think about it, and it was so easy to stay consistent. Once you see it start growing, it makes your life a lot easier. You start feeling a lot more confident that you can do it, and you start feeling less anxious about finances in general. So the right time to really use your emergency fund, though, like I mentioned earlier, you fall down some stairs and you break your leg or arm, your car breaks down, or you lose your job. These are all unexpected, large expenses that you're going to have to be able to cover for. These are the times when you use your emergency fund. You don't use it when you're like, I really want the new gaming console, but I don't have the money for it. Oh, I actually have more money in my emergency fund. That's not an emergency. That's not something you need. So it's really for true emergencies. The biggest one is job loss. You want to protect yourself against job loss. And then, like I said, I feel like the other big two are medical expense and auto costs. And then right after, if you do have to get into it and use some money out of the emergency fund, you have to reshift your focus back to refunding your emergency fund up until where it was before you took money out of it. So that 3 to 6 months expense range. So emergency funds are crucial. They make you feel so much better and get you really going on the right path. It's easier than it sounds, honestly, if you put your mind to it, and you get your finances in check with budgeting and your income sources. It can be done relatively quickly based on the level of income that you have and your expenses. This was just a quick little video on how to set up an emergency fund.